So Tna Impact took place in London, England. The show starts with Gunner walking down a hallway looking for James Storm. He's asked how he's going to address Storm about costing him the world title last week. Gunner stops and faces the camera, saying that when he sees Storm, he's done. And Gunner continues his search for Storm. So then we see Montel Porter come to the ring. Porter says that despite Storm's action during the main event, resulting in the confirmed Magnus Samoa Joe title match at Lockdown, he assures Gunner that once he takes over the wrestling side of the company, Gunner will get another shot at the belt. Porter officially announces the main event for Lockdown and he calls for Samoa Joe. So Samoa Joe comes to the ring. Then Porter calls for Magnus, and the champion makes his way to the ring. Porter asks Magnus why Dixie isn't with him, and Magnus tells him that he didn't want to subject her to the London crowd, blaming them for the decrease in the quality of living in the city. He also tells Porter that he's in charge of what he does and when, not Dixie. Porter holds up the clipboard with the title match contract and gives each man a chance to speak before signing. Joe shakes his head and chooses to say nothing. So Porter turns to Magnus and acknowledges how he has used the resources of Dixieland to hold on to the title. He tells Magnus that the quote-unquote Magnus rules will not be applied to the title match. Instead, Porter says that the quote-unquote Joe rules will be the stipulation, meaning that the match can only be won by submission or knockout. Joe signs the contract. Magnus lays the belt on the mat, grabs the clipboard, and slightly pushes Porter to the side with it. Magnus says that even though the advantage is against him, he will resort to tactics that they won't see coming if he needs to do so. He steps over the belt and tells Joe that he's a roughneck beast and that the fans chant in relation to that description. Magnus says that he's the proper representative for the business because of his intelligence and demeanor, and that Joe shouldn't be champion because he doesn't have those things. Magnus signs the contract and the two men get face to face. He taunts Joe about his mouth aroma, and Joe responds with a headbutt to the face, followed by rapid strikes to Magnus in the corner. He stomps away on the champion until the referees get him off. Porter tells Joe to wait until March 9th to whip that ass, but Joe doesn't want to hear it and goes after Magnus again outside the ring on the entranceway. He pounds away at Magnus until TNA agents Al Snow and Simon Diamond pull him off. This was a solid segment, and the best part was what Joe said, which was nothing. When Porter asked Joe if he wanted to say anything before signing the contract, he simply shook his head. For Joe, the talking is over. He just wants to beat Magnus' ass and take the title. Magnus was fine, but he needs to be at an equal level with Joe in terms of being looked at as someone who shows the strength and confidence to retain the belt. The quote-unquote Joe rules stipulation only makes him look worse because any advantage should be in control of the champion, not the challenger. Even though the match is in a cage, there should be no advantages for either man. Just let these two men go at it, and whoever wins, wins. So then we see a video of the American Wolves defeating the Glorified Jobbers on February 23rd in Morgantown, West Virginia to win the World Tag Team Championship. We see the Jobbers and Zema Ion with Robert Roode backstage in Morgantown, and they want to be on Roode's team in the Lethal Lockdown match. Roode tells Robbie E. and Mr. Duh that they have to beat the American Wolves and Bad Influence in a three-way match. If either the Glorified Jobbers or Bad Influence win, that team will be on Roode's squad. If the American Wolves win, Roode will keep looking for teammates. So then we have the three-way tag team match. The American Wolves versus Bad Influence versus the Glorified Jobbers. Solid match. Because of the American Wolves winning the World Tag Team Championship, it was interesting to see how TNA would handle this title change on a show that was taped last month. Cutting off the ring entrances so that the jobbers weren't shown with the belts, and that Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards weren't shown without the belts, was a good move, creatively speaking. The match ends with Richards making the tag to Edwards. Edwards comes into the ring and knocks down both Daniels and Kazarian with blows. He goes after Mr. Duh, but he drops off the ring apron. He turns back to Kazarian, chops him, and whips him into the ropes. Kazarian comes off the ropes and kicks him in the chest. He throws a shot, but Edwards ducks and executes a belly-to-back sit-out slam. He goes for the pin, but Robbie E comes in and breaks it up. Daniels hits Edwards from behind, and he and Kazarian whip Edwards into the ropes. Edwards comes off the ropes, and they execute a double hip toss, which shifts to a pop-up neckbreaker / sit-out powerbomb combination. Kazarian goes for the pin, but Edwards gets his shoulder up. Daniels delivers a couple of elbows to the back of Edwards' neck. He comes off the ropes, but Richards trips him and pulls him out of the ring. Meanwhile, Edwards chops Kazarian, but Kazarian responds with a punch that sends Edwards to the corner. He whips Edwards to the opposite corner, but Edwards reverses the whip. He charges, but Kazarian gets the knee up to Edwards' face. Kazarian jumps up to the top turnbuckle, but Edwards hits him with an enziguri. He lifts Kazarian onto his back and executes a backpack stunner. Edwards goes for the pin, but Mr. Duh pulls him off Kazarian. Daniels comes back into the ring, but Edwards sends him back out. He comes off the ropes and torpedoes Daniels with a suicide dive. Then Edwards comes off the top rope with a double foot stomp on Kazarian. Richards goes up to the top rope and howls. But Robbie E comes up behind him and tags him before he comes off with another double foot stomp on Kazarian. Robbie E comes into the ring and tosses Richards to the outside. Mr. Duh knocks Edwards to the outside. And Robbie E pins Kazarian for the 3. The winners of the match, the Glorified Jobbers. In the event that Bad Influence does leave TNA, the best thing to do right now is to use them to the maximum and get the most out of them. There is no logical reason why they're not in the Lethal Lockdown match as part of Dixieland's team. With Robert Roode, the Extraordinary Gentlemen's Organization would have been back together. It would have been natural. Instead, TNA Creative's internal joke continues as the jobbers are consistently being valued more than Daniels and Kazarian. Bad Influence will be on the Lockdown card, but they should have been in this match. So then we see Ethan Carter III backstage. Ethan is asked what he's going to do on the show. He says that he's going to handpick a wrestler to face him, one of England's best. Ethan acknowledges Kurt Angle's Hall of Fame induction and says that since Angle has been avoiding making facts about him known publicly, he'll do it. He says that while Angle is the veteran racehorse being put out to pasture, he's the thoroughbred ready to take the track and become the stud that will lead the business. Then Ethan holds up the American flag. Backwards. So then we see Robert Roode and Austin Aries backstage. Roode and Aries are arguing about when Aries defeated Roode for the world title at Destination X 2012, and Roode once again tells him that his win was a quote-unquote fluke. Aries has had enough of the subject and wants to know what's up in Roode's head. Roode tells Aries that he heard about his meet with Montel Porter and says that he shouldn't agree to be on his team because he knows nothing about the guy. Roode says that Aries' status in the company would be more stable with Dixie remaining in power, but Aries says that it's not about Dixie, but it's about the 10%. Roode says that's exactly what it's about, and that's why Aries should go with him. Roode leaves. I thought this was fine. Aries will go with either someone that he doesn't know but could trust, or go with someone that he does know but can't trust. So it's an interesting nugget that will obviously figure into making the decision that is best for him. So then we had Ethan Carter III versus Doug Williams. Ethan wins with the headlock driver. Then after the match, he applies a leg bar submission on Williams. Because of the fact that Doug Williams had his home crowd cheering for their boy, this match should have been longer and more competitive. Yes, Ethan was going to win, but Williams should not have been treated like a jobber. So then we see James Storm come to the ring. Storm says that he'll face Gunner and give the reason why he cost him the world title, and that Gunner is welcome to come out. So Gunner comes to the ring. Storm wants Gunner to listen first, and Gunner says that his reasoning had better be good, or else. Storm tells him that when Gunner one-upped him in the Feast or Fired match to get the world title shot briefcase, he was going to prevent him from winning the title because he wanted him to see what it's like to get screwed. Storm says that what really pissed him off was that Gunner giving him the World Tag Team title shot briefcase was a charity case, and that he doesn't place second to anyone. Gunner wants to know if he should have just given Storm the World title shot briefcase, and Storm says affirmative, because Gunner was nothing without him. He says that Gunner got over on his back and never showed his gratitude for that. Gunner says that his serving with his fellow Marines didn't require a verbal thanks, and that they fought for Storm's right to get drunk. Storm says that people just live their lives and don't worry about Gunner coming back alive or not. But Gunner says that everyone cares. Storm tells Gunner that no one should ever pay their respects to him, and Gunner responds with a punch. The two go at it outside the ring. Storm pulls out a chair from under the ring and tries to hit Gunner but misses, hitting the ring post instead. He drops the chair and runs. Gunner picks up the chair and looks at Storm as Storm returns the glance. After the commercial break, Gunner is backstage and says that he's going to wait for Storm to come out so that they can go again. Even though the dialogue exchange was good, I thought that the segment was handled the wrong way. Why would Gunner just stand there and listen to Storm try to justify why he cost him the world title? There was nothing Storm could say that would make the situation better. Gunner should have just come out and start beating Storm's ass, and that would lead into the physical exchange between the two. That should have been the segment. If your best friend fucked your wife or your girlfriend, would you just stand there and listen to him explain why he was justified in doing it? Exactly. So then we see Magnus in the ring with German wrestler Bad Bones John Klinger. Magnus says that since Joe wants to come at him on the cheap, he's going to take care of the situation by getting someone to take Joe out. He says that since there was no one in the UK that he could find worthy enough, Bones is going to be the guy to do it. Magnus dares Joe to come out, and Joe comes out. So we have Samoa Joe versus Bad Bones John Klinger. Samoa Joe wins in a squasher as he applies the rear naked choke and makes Bones submit. This was another match that should have been longer and more competitive. Bones was the online worldwide gut check winner, and TNA seems to be making him somewhat of a big deal. Now they have buried him. Last week he had his promo cut off after 3 seconds because of the Sam Shaw attack. This week he gets squashed. Some people have said that because Bones is affiliated with Gut Check, he's not worth anything anyway. However, if he's getting this attention, then he has to have enough solid talent for TNA to give him the face time. If that's the case, then he shouldn't have been buried like this. So then we see Austin Aries and Montel Porter backstage. Porter wants to know if Aries will be on the squad in the Lethal Lockdown match. Aries tells him that because of his convo with Rude, he can't make a decision yet. Porter says that Rude will say whatever to get him on Dixieland's team, but Aries says that Porter will say whatever as well. He says that he has to look out for himself and that cash doesn't take the place of just being recognized as number one. Aries says that in order to obtain that, it takes juice. Porter says that he has that, dropping his global accomplishments. but Aries says that Rude has impressive credentials as well. Aries tells Porter to make him the referee for his match against Rude, but Porter is cautious about being double-crossed. Aries says that Porter should determine for himself if Aries can be a guy that he can count on. So Porter agrees. They shake hands. The fact that Aries is the referee clearly leads to someone getting shorted in this match. Will he fuck over Porter or Rude? So then we have the TNA Hall of Fame induction ceremony for Kurt Angle. Jeremy Borash does the intro and puts over Angle. Then a video in tribute to Angle was shown, followed by Borash's formal introduction of Angle. Angle comes to the ring and Borash gives him a rollie. Then they hug. Angle says that the Hall of Fame is for the fans and that the company is still around because of them. He says that he didn't feel that he deserved the induction at Bound for Glory because of both business and personal setbacks. But he says that he had to dig deep to make things right and that now is the perfect time. Angle thanks those who motivated him to become sober and have great matches with Robert Roode. God, his wife, his children, the workers, and the fans. As Angle wraps himself, Ethan Carr III comes out and stands at the entrance. He mockingly puts over Angle's tribute video and says that he has one of his own to show, so he tells production to go with it. The video shows Ethan's attack on Angle accompanied by speech balloons conveying Ethan's thoughts, which are intended to degrade Angle. Ethan tells Kurt that he needs to give the fans the facts, and Angle wants to know what facts those are. He invites Ethan to the ring to give out those facts, and Ethan comes down to the ring. He moves the podium and positions himself behind it. Ethan reads from a piece of paper and reveals that a report from a secret sorcerer has stated that Angle has tears in both of his CLs. He goes on to say that Angle needs to get cut on and that he's done. Ethan apologizes to Angle for the injuries, but he says that Angle should quit the business. Angle asks Ethan why he would want to get his ass kicked by him, and Ethan says that 2 torn CLs would prevent him from doing that. Angle tells Ethan that he should get confirmation of the torn CLs from the guy who supposedly has the torn CLs, rather than get the information from dirt techs. Ethan says that the dirt techs are on the mark half of the time. Angle tells him that the one who should know whether he's injured or not is going to be correct all the time, and that both of his CLs are solid. Angle says that he understands that Ethan is a relative newbie and that he grossly misjudged himself as to why he would want to be anywhere near him. He punches Ethan. Ethan goes down and rolls out of the ring. Angle finishes by telling Ethan that they will face each other in a cage at Lockdown. I thought this was good. Ethan has made solid progression as a heel. A clean victory over Angle would give him the signature win that he should have gotten against Sting at Genesis, and it would add to the build toward a potential match with Magnus. So then we have the women's tag team match. Velvet Sky and Madison Rayne versus Lady Tapa and Alpha Female. Garbage. Lady Tapa gets the pin with the Fireman's Carry Stunner on Madison Rayne. This match was a mess. It was presented as 2 singles matches within a tag team match. Madison versus Tapa and Velvet versus Alpha. In addition, the physical superiority of Tapa and Alpha meant nothing as they were being knocked around at times by Velvet and Madison. Then Chris Sabin gets involved in the match. Gail Kim gets involved in the match. Then ODB comes down after the match and cleans out all the heels. And TNA actually teased Velvet attempting the in your face on Alpha and then having Alpha saved by Sabin, as if that would be believable. The women's division is lacking in storylines and structure. Matches are being thrown together just for the sake of having them. The news of new female wrestlers in TNA is encouraging, but it won't mean anything if these problems aren't corrected. One more thing. A Beautiful People reunion only exists if Angelina Love is there. And it appears that will be happening soon. So then we see a video segment featuring Tigre Uno coming to TNA and making his debut at Lockdown. He will be teaming up with the Great Muta and Sia Sonata in a 6-man tag team match against Bad Influence and Chris Sabin. So that should be an entertaining match. So then we see Sam Shaw backstage. Shaw is asked if his attack on Mr. Anderson and his kidnapping of Christy Hemme was wrong. Shaw says that he rescued a damsel in need, and that nobody gets that. However, he says they will. So we see Sam Shaw come to the ring. He stares at Christy Hemme before entering the ring, and she returns an uncomfortable look at him. Shaw drops an RWE quote, basically stating that a person who is different from others achieves because he thinks differently from others. Shaw tells Christy that she doesn't get him, and he would like her to come into the ring so that he can explain. So Christy comes into the ring. Shaw says that they had fun on their dates, and he says that she had fun as well. He says that he's been a gentleman to her, but other guys won't be. Shaw tells her that while men just want to fuck her, he wants to be the man that wants her as a complete partner. Then, Mr. Anderson comes out. Shaw tells Christy that Anderson is one of those guys that just wants to get in, get off, and get out. And Anderson tells him to shut up, calling him a quote-unquote creepy bastard. Anderson tells Shaw that he may think he has something with Christy, but it doesn't exist. He says that what will be happening is his kicking Shaw's ass. As Anderson moves toward the ring, Shaw says that he has never made any sexual moves toward Christy, but if he did, she would like it. He says that guys can always get with chicks like her, and she slaps him. Shaw stands there, stunned. He drops the mic, grabs Christy, and upon hearing Anderson hit the ring, he shoves her toward him. They collide and hit the mat. Anderson helps Christy out of the ring, but Shaw comes up behind and applies the standing triangle arm choke. Anderson fights it, but slowly succumbs. Shaw throws him down on the mat. This segment was okay in that it finally gives Shaw a program to launch from, but the storyline with Christy is starting to drag a little. Something needs to happen at Lockdown that could prevent it from losing air and maybe even give it some kick. Possibly Christy joining Shaw. So then we have yet another video segment featuring Willow. No switching, TNA. So then we see James Storm and Gunner brawling backstage. They go inside a tractor trailer. They go in between tractor trailers. They continue beating the crap out of each other until Al Snow and Simon Diamond break them up. Storm closes a fence gate in front of him and separates himself from Gunner. Gunner tells Storm that his lord is going to allow him to destroy him. But Storm says that Gunner's savior will end up striking him. This was a really good physical segment between Storm and Gunner, and if the first segment had been done correctly, it would have only enhanced this segment that much more. So then we see Eric Young backstage. Young says that there has been no communication between himself and Abyss. He hopes that Abyss gets well, but he doesn't want to see the guy that he saw last. Young needs to see someone other than Abyss, like Chris Sabin. That would be a good restart program for Young. Enough with Abyss. So then we had the main event. Robert Roode versus Montel Porter, with Austin Aries as special referee. Solid match. The match ends with Roode attempting a fireman's carry cutter on Porter, but Porter repeatedly elbows him in the face and escapes. Porter executes an overdrive and goes for the pin, but Roode kicks out. They exchange blows, but then Porter hits Roode with a series of forearms. He comes off the ropes, but Roode ducks a blow and delivers an enziguri. Roode comes off the ropes, but Porter delivers a drop kick to the knee. He sets up to deliver his drive-by kick, but as he charges, Aries hits Porter with a discus elbow. Roode picks up Porter, delivers the fireman's carry cutter, and gets the pin. The winner of the match, Robert Roode. Show ends. During last year's UK tour, Austin Aries was a heel and was loudly cheered by the crowd as they chanted his name. Even before then, at Bound for Glory 2012, he was a heel champion that was cheered and had his name chanted while his face challenger Jeff Hardy was booed. Now, once again, TNA makes the attempt to force Aries as a heel on a crowd that will not go along with it. When something is so obvious, such as Aries being a face, instead of fighting it, you have to go with what the crowd is dictating to you. At Lockdown, when Aries, being on Dixieland's team, is tagged in for the first time during the Lethal Lockdown match, TNA will likely hear that for themselves. Sometimes, the best booking results from not what you give to the crowd, but from what the crowd gives to you. I'm Tazmark 2002, and that was my Tna Impact Analysis for February 27th, 2014. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below. Click the like or dislike button, and if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions or comments about TNA or wrestling in general, you can reach me on Twitter, Tazmark2002, that's TAZMARK2002, and if your comments exceed 140, get at me with an email. Tazmark2002@gmail.com. Be sure to watch the TNA Impact review that I do with Chuck P, live every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on Chuck P's YouTube channel. And if you can't watch us live, you can always watch the archive. This Sunday, in addition to the TNA review, we'll be doing a preview of Lockdown right after. And after Lockdown, we'll be doing a Lockdown review. So make sure that you tune in. Decent show. No Dixie Carter. No Rockstar Dud. The wrestling was at a minimum, but the Lockdown build has been solid. Decent show. On March 2nd, TNA taped their one night only pay-per-view with Wrestle 1 called Outbreak, in which the general theme was TNA talent versus Wrestle 1's Japanese talent. Included within that was the fact that 3 of TNA's title holders defended their belts, and there were 2 title changes. The Glorified Jobbers beat the American Wolves and the team of Kaz Hayashi and Shuji Kondo to regain the World Tag Team Championship, which lacks logic in every sense. Also, Sia Sanada defeated Austin Aries to win the X Division title. For the record, Magnus retained the world title against Kai. The point of mentioning this is the fact that this pay-per-view will air at a later date. And now TNA has to book around this because the matchmaking involving these titles now has to lead into whenever this airs. That could allow potential title changes to be delayed until Outbreak is shown. When you paint yourself into a corner You either have to wait until the paint dries before you can move, or you step onto the wet paint and mess up the floor. TNA has to wag the tail, not have the tail wag it. I'm Tazmart 2002. Gone.